And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends, Romans, and countrymen, lend me both of your ears because we have us another humdinger. That's an Eskimo word. Another humdinger tonight. And whether you're down the street, around the corner, across America, or somewhere around this great big world, thank you for taking the time to tune in. I think you're going to be very, very pleased with our guest tonight. This man has done more in 45 years than three of us could do in 70 years. Uh, I'm telling you what, these people amaze me that they can do all this stuff. And they've got 24 hours just like the rest of us. I could never understand it. But nonetheless, Michael, Michael Waddington, I'll get it right. Sometimes I can't speak for spluttering, Michael. I'll tear the English language completely up, but I'll eventually get there. Welcome, my friend, to the show tonight.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
And we have our co-host, Mr. Ed Temple out of Columbus, Ohio. Ed, how you doing?
Well, hey, the fact that you didn't call me sidekick, I'm doing a lot better already. I appreciate it.
He busts me every show, one way, shape, or form. He always gets me. I've got to think.
Don't try that.
No, I know. Sometimes that's very dangerous because a lot of times I'll stop thinking about what I'm thinking about even before I think of what I'm thinking about.
I understand.
How about? Oh, that's scary, Ed. If you understand that. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to play a clip real quick, just to set the stage with you. If you'll just bear with me a minute, we'll get this thing started. But this is what Michael and his wife is all about.
In our family, we believe everybody in America has a duty to serve their country in some capacity. I enlisted in the Army in 1993 when I was in high school, and I went on to become a JAG officer. In my second tour, I volunteered to defend someone accused of torturing and allegedly murdering prisoners in Bagram Prison, and basically help blow open the prisoner abuse program that the CIA was running. After that, in 2006, I resigned and joined my wife in law practice, and we've been practicing together since.
We're a husband and wife team, and we work on all of our cases together. We're very selective on the cases that we do take because we live this every day. We talk about our cases for breakfast. We talk about our cases during lunchtime. We're involved in our cases at dinners or our dinner conversations. Because when we do get involved in these cases, we get involved in them fully. We are all in. I love what I do. I love what we stand for. I love dealing with our clients and working with them. That's kind of my favorite part, really, is the counseling, the advising, the guiding them through the situation. I like to think of myself kind of as a light at the end of the tunnel for them.
I've been in the Navy for 13 years and never been in any trouble, so getting kicked out of the Navy was my biggest fear. Every time I would talk to Mr. Waddington or anybody from the firm, they always made me feel like I was first priority. They work with you consistently. It's just amazing, and the feeling of knowing that I get to continue my career is a huge weight off my shoulder. There's nothing I could do that would amount to how much I appreciate the law firm. Thank you, Mr. Waddington, and to the firm.
This year we're going to be doing a book signing for our new book called Kick-Ass Closings. It's a compilation of closing arguments from some of the most legendary trial lawyers over the past 50 years in some of the most high-profile trials. It's a great way to pass on the wisdom to younger generations and to allow others out there to kind of learn from our experiences and share the knowledge.
I'm so grateful for Michael and Alexandra and the firm. It's worth every single penny, especially when somebody falsely accuses you and the government has unlimited resources. They have so much power. You have none. If I didn't have Michael, I probably would have taken a deal, like a lot of these young kids do. Hire a civilian lawyer because they will fight all the way.
What we try to do with our cases is instill hope and courage in our clients, because a lot of times when they call us, they're scared. They have no hope. They were told there's no option. They're going down. You're going to jail. You're going to be a sex offender. You're never going to see your family again. You're going to jail for 50 years, whatever. When we get on board and they decide to hire us and that they want to fight, then we're going to fight.
We are not the law firm that people want to hire if they're planning on pleading guilty. They know we are the ones that they hire to fight. And that's what we do. And we go in there and we fight their case. And we do everything that we can and we give it all to get them the best result that they can possibly get.
I like that, Michael. If you want to fight, we're going to come and fight for you. I like that.
That's what we do.
Let me say this first of all. Thank you for your service. And you defend our service people all around the world. One of the first things I asked him, Ed, on Sunday when we did the test is, what time zone are you going to be in on Wednesday night? Because this man travels the world. So I had to find out what time zone he was going to be in so we could schedule and make the appropriate time for all the time zones and so on and so forth. Michael, tell us, what's the difference between a civilian court and a military court?
Well, I'll give you some of the main differences. You know, the civilian court system it's slower. It's mostly guilty pleas. You know, when they charge someone with something, they end up pleading them down to some lower level charge. In the military, the system is a lot faster. There are a lot more things that are crimes, and it can be pretty swift justice. I mean, things are crimes in the military. You were in the Marine Corps, right?
Right.
You know, in the Marine Corps, there are things that are crimes, and just like in all the branches of the service, like even disrespect. Right. So there aren't crimes in the civilian world. So, and there's like a zero tolerance for a lot of things that you would get away with in the civilian side. So there are also many other differences. You know, like the size of the jury. They don't need 12 out of 12 to convict. They need only 2/3, and things of that nature. But I think it's a pretty fair system once you get in front of the jury. I think the military juries are fair for the most part. I think the judges are very fair. It's just up until you get in front of that judge and jury, you often run into overzealous commanders, overzealous prosecutors, and that's where we come in to try to cut them off, because if it was up to them, they would just throw people in jail without due process.
I like what one fella said on that clip. These young soldier men and women, I mean, when they're up against something, they stand almost by themselves. The government's got all the big bucks, the big this, the big that, all the resources, as the man said. And he said these guys are scared. These guys and girls are scared, intimidated. And then you guys come along. It's got to be, like the one fellow said, he would have probably copped on a deal if it hadn't been for you guys. What do you think the odds are of people that doesn't have representation like you fellows? What's the odds of people that just go with a military lawyer in the military court? How big of a chance do they have?
I mean, you know, it depends on a lot of things. I mean, one of the biggest things are the facts, but the government and the investigators, and they kind of stack the facts. So by the time you even get your charges as a soldier, sailor, airman, Marine, they've already perfected their case. They have their witnesses lined up, and they hit you hard with they'll call you in on a Friday, for example. This is very common. You don't know why you're being called in to like show up in your dress uniform, and you have to show up, you salute, and they read you a whole list of charges that could put you in jail for the rest of your life. And they tell you, yeah, go see your military lawyer. And then you call the military lawyer and you meet with the person. It's kind of like the movie A Few Good Men. I don't know if you remember seeing that. I don't know if you've seen it, where you show up and the lawyers, the first thing, a lot of them are like, hey, I think we can negotiate this down to a plea. And then the client, and they're mostly men that are accused. I think it's in the 90s, like 95, 96% or more of people accused in the military are men. Not a lot of females get prosecuted for various reasons. Maybe because they aren't committing any crimes, or maybe, I don't know what it is, but that's a fact. So when I talk to men, that's what I'm referring to. It's like almost all of our clients. And they go see the military lawyer and they realize this guy or lady has been out of law school for 2 years and they've done 6 cases, 6 of which have been guilty pleas. And they get scared. And there are actually a lot of suicides in the military that stem from people that are being court-martialed and that see no hope and they feel they have no chance. And so it's kind of disheartening. And so nowadays, thank goodness we have the internet, they can get online, and if they can put together the resources, they have the ability to hire someone to come in and help them out. So, and I'm not saying that every military lawyer is brand new and inexperienced, but the majority of them are. And also, honestly, a lot of them are scared. It's like that case you showed that was in the video. When I took that case, I was a young captain, and they wanted me to plead that soldier guilty that was involved in the alleged torture abuse case. And he said he didn't do it. So we fought it, but that was pretty much the end of my career because it involved going after politicians, generals, and things like that to show that that's what was happening. Like my client was a scapegoat. He was being scapegoated back in 2005, 2006 to try to prove to the world that we didn't torture people. And now we all know that the U.S. did have some sort of a torture program, but I didn't think it was right if you're doing that program, that's a whole nother discussion. But you don't run a program like that and then somebody dies at the hands of some faceless CIA person and then you pin it on an E3 or an E4 in the Army just because they're an easy scapegoat.
Right.
So,
Ed?
Yeah. So a few different things. One, as I used to watch that show Jag. What is JAG and what is the difference between JAG and what you're doing now? Because you used to do JAG.
Okay, so JAG stands for Judge Advocate General's Corps. So it's the JAG Corps, and a JAG is a military. It's a military lawyer. A JAG is slang for like a military lawyer. They could be a prosecutor, a defense lawyer. By the way, the Marines don't consider themselves JAG, so they're separate. They're Marines are Marines. And so, although they're lawyers, but all the other branches, Navy, Army, and Air Force, they call themselves JAGs, JAG lawyers. So, like the TV show Jag, it takes place in the Navy. That show is super fake. I know it was. I wish I wrote that script because it went on for 10 or 12 seasons.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of like camaraderie and hey, we're all in this together to fight for justice.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like that in real life. Like it's a knife fight. They accuse your client. They stack the deck. NCIS isn't out there looking for justice. They're basically looking for enough evidence to pin it on your client.
Yeah. So, with respect to that, how do these guys? These guys are in the military. How do they afford you?
Well, some of them have. I mean, a lot of them rely on their parents. They rely on their parents, or and by the way, we don't. Compared to someone who does what I do with my experience in Miami, for example, we have to adjust our rates for the military. I could make a lot more money defending people in Miami, probably 3 times as much. But I would be defending probably pretty serious criminals that are actual criminals, like drug traffickers and stuff like that. I don't do those types of cases. Everyone I defend has a clean record. They're all military service members. So we kind of adjust a little bit that way. And then some of them, we do charge though, but some of them use credit card and they just, maybe take some of their savings and whatnot. But tell you what, the price that we charge, if you look at what it's going to cost them if they get convicted of something, particularly something they didn't do, it's life altering. So it's a real bargain if you look at it that way.
Yeah, and so you brought up the Navy SEAL team. I brought up in pre-show. Can you tell us a little bit about the SEAL team and the fact that you have to defend them in the first place? These should be American heroes, and so what's going on with them? Well,
that could be a 3-hour discussion or an entire series, a television series. But if you've been following some of the news, the Navy, we had the Gallagher case. I wasn't involved with that case. I know a lot of the folks involved with that. And as you saw in that case, that was a homicide case. They basically targeted this guy. I don't know what he did. I wasn't there,
But the way they went about giving this American hero due process was a real problem, because the Navy, the JAG Corps and the NCIS, pretty much at every opportunity, based on what I know, what his lawyers are telling me, were cutting corners. They're not following the rules, not following the law. But the case I did was kind of a fallout of that. So that case happened, and a lot of Navy SEAL leadership problems were revealed. And as a result, instead of addressing the leadership problems, they often go back after the enlisted. So over at DevGru and SEAL Team 6 over in Norfolk area, they started targeting different people to try to show the world that we take this seriously. And so that was the Aaron Howard case. It's been in the media. He's right now has a petition out on, I think it's change.org and another organization. If you look up Pardon Aaron Howard, Navy SEAL, he was convicted of allegedly catfishing someone. They really threw the book at this guy with very little evidence. And every step of the way, we got the first round of charges. We looked at it. We're like, these aren't even charges. Like I told you earlier when we spoke, one of the charges was they made up charges under Article 134 of the UCMJ. That's the catch-all article, where you could accuse someone of spitting on the sidewalk because it's prejudicial to good order and discipline, for example. You could just pretty much make it up. So one of the charges they charged him with was impersonating a person. Like, that's not a crime. So if I'm saying I'm Tom Cruise right now, that's not a crime. And they were saying it was because it was prejudicial to good order and discipline. So every time we got a charge dropped or we were able to knock it down, they would just throw a few more on the charge sheet. So in the end, he ended up getting convicted of one of those catch-all articles. Didn't get kicked out of the Navy. So they didn't give him a dishonorable discharge or kick him out. But what they did in the end, just about a week ago, and this ties into the Gallagher case, because they kept, even though he was acquitted of the homicide, they kept coming after him.
Yeah.
Like, they just won't quit. Like, in my experience with the Navy JAG Corps, if they set their sights on you, and especially if you prove that the person's falsely accused, they often don't quit. They will keep coming and coming. And so, like with Aaron Howard, and he would be a great guest on your show, by the way. He's a pretty cool guy, really cool guy. And they came after him. Like, for example, they took his uniform after the court-martial, and some of his leadership, ripped the ribbons off. They ripped off his Bronze Star that he had and just trashed it and gave it back to him in a trash bag. And they put him on toilet cleaning details, stuff like that, even after his case was done. And just last week, they had a board, what's it called, an administrative separation board. And they scheduled on a date that I wasn't available to do it intentionally. And they did it, and they went ahead, and within 40, so I wasn't there. In the Navy, you're allowed to do it without the civilian lawyer. If under certain, because the Navy's generally at sea and they're very active. So there's certain rules that they took advantage of, and they did the case when I wasn't available. Not that it would have made a difference, honestly, because my co-counsel, we had to go to the Marine Corps to get a co-counsel. And that's another topic that I'll tell you about in a second if you're interested. But we had to go outside of the Navy to get someone that was really willing to stand up for this Navy SEAL. So he was defended by me and a Marine. So it was myself and a Marine JAG who defended Aaron. And so the Marine JAG defended him at the board. And after the prosecution's, a board is basically a separation hearing. After the prosecution did his opening, he presented a few pieces of evidence. For example, the fact that Aaron Howard has a Facebook page and he's trying to get a pardon, that was used against him for embarrassing the Navy. And within a few minutes, the board said, "Hey, we heard enough." And my co-counsel, the Marine JAG, said, "Hold on, we didn't even present our case." And they said, no, we heard enough. And 45 minutes later, they were trying to vote to kick him out. And so the prosecution actually had the audacity, and there's a recording of this that I could share with you all. I don't have it available on my desktop, but in the board, the prosecutor JAG, the Navy JAG, who had never been in combat, some brand new dude out of law school, stood up and gave a speech. And he said, "This is just like Walmart. We're just firing Petty Officer Howard. It's a hiring and firing decision." So my Marine co-counsel, Captain Germano, he's a great attorney and a great hero. He stood up and he tells the prosecutor, just said, "Hey, this is just a hiring firing decision. This is like Walmart." And he says, "You don't get your GED I'm not going to curse on your show, but you don't get your GD face blown off in Walmart, because Aaron Howard actually had his face blown off by part of it. It had to be reconstructed. When an RPG hit a building he was in, he was ducked behind the window. You know, when you hit, this is in, I can't say where, but it's somewhere in the Middle East. Because that's another thing they try to get, is they say we were leaking classified information simply because we mentioned his Bronze Star. And it was a bogus threat against me. But in this firefight that he was involved in, one of them, an RPG hit the outside of the building. It blew through it didn't puncture the entire building, but it blew. And then on the inside of the building, all that concrete blasted his face off. And we have photographs of his face had to be reconstructed with plastic and whatnot. So they kicked him out with another than honorable discharge and took off his benefits. So I recommend you get him on your show. I think you would love him. He's a much more exciting character than I am by far. I mean, he's got some stories.
We'd love to get that contact. That's for sure.
Yeah, write that down, Ed, if you got a pencil handy.
Aaron Howard.
Aaron Howard.
Aaron Howard.
He's easy to find online. You know, now his only chance is trying to get a pardon, or he's also appealing the case. Although he didn't get kicked out, he has a few things he could do to appeal the discharge. And the discharge was not from a court martial. It was from, like I said, this little kangaroo court board that they did.
Michael, in a military court, are you guilty and you have to prove yourself innocent, unlike a civilian court? Is that?
Well, you're guilty until proven innocent, but it's really not that way. I mean, like right now I'm doing a case in Texas, and if I wouldn't have done my opening statement today and presented any evidence and cross-examined, you would be stuck with like a completely false story. So yeah, we have to. You shouldn't have to, but you do have to. If you want your best chance of success, you really have to take the battle to your opponent and prove your innocence in a way. I mean, you don't have to. If you go out there and interview a whole bunch of Army or Navy lawyers, you're like, no, it's the same. There's a presumption you did something wrong if you're sitting at that table next to me. And so when the jury comes out in the military, I mean, these are all senior people, you know, colonels and command sergeant majors and chiefs and all that. And so when they're looking at you, they're kind of wondering, like, what this guy do? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I'm sure it's probably the same a little bit in the civilian court too, but they know how, in the military, everybody on the jury knows how the system works. So they basically assume that if you're there's something to it.
Wow.
And you were mentioning pre-show a little bit about the witch hunt, quote unquote. Can you explain that a little bit?
In terms of, well, right now, I mean, and I think that.
Uh-oh, Facebook didn't like that question.
There he is. Oh, there he went. He'll be back.
Oh,
there he is.
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I don't know. You mean Facebook like blocked something that someone said? I know they're doing that nowadays. Apparently.
Yeah, it's hard to tell what went on there, Michael. But anyhow.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so there's right now in the military, there's kind of this is like remnants of things that were happening in the past, you know, in terms of, you know, probably 4 or 5 years ago and before that, where if you're accused of something, particularly if it's sexual related, the military pretty much assumes you did it and they will pursue you and try to kick you out, you know, and there's often very little due process given. And what we find nowadays is you're almost better off going to a court martial, because at least you can get a jury to decide. Because a lot of my cases, let's say, I mean, I can give you hundreds of examples, but I'll give you one. Let's say you're a, you know, fighter pilot from the United States Air Force, no issues. You know, those folks are generally super high speed. They have no blemishes in their background. They're really all American folks. And someone makes an allegation against you, even if it's unfounded, nowadays, they put it in your file. And they put at least a minimum, a letter of reprimand in your file. And if you get a letter of reprimand for anything, even if it's unfounded, sexual related, I'm not talking about a conviction. I'm talking like they literally put a memo in your file saying you've been accused. we could have evidence that it didn't happen. We've had cases where people recanted. It goes in your file and it kills your career. So if you want to take someone out fairly easily, and let's say you're a terrible soldier and you're running into trouble, you can't pass PT, you have issues with passing, with whatever. You just lob an allegation out there. Yeah, this guy harassed me. It could be even an anonymous allegation. And you often now they're giving you base of choice. They'll often send you home for like up to a year if you feel the workforce is hostile. I mean, it could be completely false. And so I've had cases where people were getting into trouble. They couldn't pass their PT, the height, weight. And they say, well, my commander sexually harassed me 2 years ago. I don't feel comfortable around men. And then they basically remove them from that environment and tell them they can telecommute. This is before COVID. In the meantime, that commander, whoever that is, will get a reprimand, maybe not even court-martialed. That guy's career will be done. And then the person who made the allegation is almost like, we call it the halo effect. And I'm not talking about actual people that were assaulted that have been proven and whatnot. I'm talking just lobbying it. Like you see in the media nowadays, it's the same sort of thing. You say, oh, that politician grabbed my butt 17 years ago in the hallway.
Yeah.
Often you're done.
Yeah.
And
guilty. Mm-hmm.
I don't think,
guilty without having your day in court.
And that's one of the biggest problems. When you stand up and when you swear that you will protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, that's really one of the main things you're standing up and saying you'll give your life to protect, which is due process.
Yeah.
And so I don't understand how some of these politicians and people on the internet are like, they want to rush to judgment on everyone unless it's their candidate. And it's wrong because you want to protect and defend the Constitution. You could start by ensuring due process.
They have a bit of hypocrisy going when it comes to that, especially since, I could mention a lady named Hillary Clinton, didn't believe anybody when it was her husband. And then when it wasn't her husband, she said we're supposed to believe everybody no matter what. So
it went beyond that. I mean, with that individual, it's not. I don't believe them. She actively went after in the media and through legal means. She went about steps repeatedly, and this is all news. Old news to destroy these women.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like, oh, I don't believe you. It's like take her career out. Even Monica Lewinsky. I mean, I'm not saying Monica Lewinsky is a hero or anything, but Monica Lewinsky, I've heard numerous accounts where she would be invited to be a speaker, and then they would invite Bill, and she would basically get thrown off the list and this is by people that are saying you should believe the victim. Right. They would rather hang out with Bill, who's a whole nother topic of discussion, and then kick someone off there she was a young intern, and the guy did take advantage of her. I'm not saying, if you think back to someone who's like, my kids are that age now. My kids are in college. They could be an intern, and you don't expect some married, senator to be asking for that sort of thing under the desk. It's kind of it's very inappropriate.
Yeah, I think that's pretty easy to believe.
Michael, when you was talking about after the person is found innocent, guilty, whatever, and then they come after you with this board, these people, these things. Isn't there something that can be done, or is that just how the military operates? I mean, if a guy in the military court is found, you didn't do this, you didn't do this, you didn't do this. Okay, you lose no rank, you lose nothing. Go back to your unit, go about your business. What right do they have, other than they've been embarrassed because the big gurus didn't get them? But what right do they have? Isn't there something that can stop this?
Well, that's the unique thing with the military system is it's command driven. So like when this guy, when we're dealing with SO1 Aaron Howard, and by the way, he's given me permission to discuss this. I'm not divulging anything, attorney-client privilege or anything like that. But it's the command. So it's if he makes someone mad in the command, or he offends some Commander 06's mistress, and they circle ranks on this guy, and it's a little bit of that was going on, not with within a lot of these DevGru and Navy SEAL cases. They control everything. They control whether they hire and fire him. They like in his case, they shut off his pay. They transferred him without orders to a different unit. I mean, you'd have to. We filed so many motions with the court, and then the court just kept coming back and saying, well, what you're saying is true. Like, you did stop his pay, you did this, but I can't prove that the commander did it with a malicious intent. Because the commander was like, well, it was accidental. It was our understanding he wasn't entitled to this pay. Like, they lie. Okay. So one of the main things I do, and just because someone's in uniform and in command does not mean they tell the truth.
That's right.
There's a lot of people, the higher up they get, sometimes the more corrupt they are and the more they're used to getting away with things. So we had to bring in Howard's case, we brought in the command leadership for DevGru, the SEAL Team 6 leadership. And the first time the judge ordered them in the court, they blew them off. They didn't even show up. And so that kind of made the judge mad. So the judge ordered them to all show up. And they didn't want to show up because they said, oh, he's going to reveal what our faces look like. Like, it basically, they try to put it back on me. And I told him, like, if y'all just follow the rules and quit obstructing justice, destroying evidence, like they took his Bronze Star and threw it in the trash before he was awarded it. Just stupid stuff like that. If you guys would stop doing that, we wouldn't need to call you in here at all. Because frankly, what he was accused of would be handled if it was anyone else aside from Howard, who kind of made a few people mad, which had nothing to do with his case, personality conflicts, some jealousy, because he won the SEAL Team 6 SEAL of the Year right before his court-martial, and he won a Bronze Star with Valor for combat in a foreign country right before that, for saving Americans' lives. So anyway, if you make him mad, I mean, it's like appealing. Imagine you have a little king who's kind of corrupt, and he's the Supreme Court, he's the judge, he's the jury, and then he railroads somebody, and then I go to appeal to him. And so there are other ways outside, but they're like long and very expensive ways. Like, I can go, the pardon is a whole nother thing. That's a long shot, but we can go to Washington and file a petition. It takes like 4 or 5 years to be heard at the Navy Board of Correctional Military Records. Wow. But but by that time, I mean, come on. In 4 years from now, who knows where any of us are going to be?
That's almost like these politicians that investigates themselves.
It's the same thing. It's like, right, okay, you're saying my son did something, or I'm gonna put together a team to investigate, and it's I think we have to call things the way they are, and that's a big problem with a lot of people in the militaries. They don't have the courage to call someone out, and so I can do it much more easily as a civilian. But it's like you work for Walmart, right? And so this is kind of how I look at the military justice. Imagine Walmart, and Walmart has the power to write its own criminal laws, and they can create their own judges, and they can send you to federal prison. And then the president of Walmart, somebody makes that guy mad or that lady mad. And so the president charges, in the military, it's the general that charges. So the president of Walmart charges the person. The president picks the jury of his peers, his friends, in some one way or another. And then you have to go in front of the president of Walmart and some of the top executives of Walmart to prove your case in front of a judge that works for Walmart. And you have a lawyer that's appointed by Walmart. And they're saying that you are a disgrace to Walmart. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then it's not an easy fight. I mean, it's fun for me and I enjoy doing it, but I don't want to make it sound like we do lose some cases, and sometimes our guys get railroaded.
Yeah. So at the higher level, obviously we've had a whole, the last going on 4 years, we've seen how corrupt the FBI is, how corrupt politicians, of course, have always been known to be corrupt. But we it's kind of a new thing to find out that, organizations like the FBI are so at least at the top level, so corrupt and biased and politicized. Of course, we also know science is now too, very politicized. And so I guess where I'm going with that is, people tend to trust the military, and I want to. I'm an American. I want to stand up for the flag, and the thing is, when you start finding out that it's just as corrupt or maybe more corrupt and doesn't really have a real checks and balances system, it kind of makes you look at it a little bit differently.
Okay, so I think that the overwhelming majority of people that are in military leadership are outstanding citizens, and I do trust them. Okay.
Yeah.
You understand, with like the situations where you do have maybe you have I do deal with people that are some of the bad apples, but I also then deal with situations where the command are bad apples. But the court-martial system that I deal with is a tiny percentage of the overall system. I mean, because most people are going about their business, doing their job, but it allows us to kind of take a look to see what's going on in certain units. And frankly, a unit that has a lot of crime in it and a lot of problems is usually, it's a command problem often. I mean, a lot of these things have to go back to the command. But yeah, I don't want to make it sound like their whole military.
No, that's not what I mean. I guess where I'm getting at is, it's just like with anything else. There's more. Our country doesn't work without moral people. It doesn't do you any good to have laws if people are just overall immoral. They only work if you have a moral country, and obviously that's part of our problem right now. Now it's just willy-nilly. And the military even more, because they're set up so that it's honorable men in power. And it just kind of goes back to you can't separate. We wanted to. The military has gotten real, especially under the last president and even Bill Clinton. When you start loosening up a lot of the moral code, you wonder why it breaks down.
No, that's an excellent point. And so I really think it comes to, and this is kind of what I think you're hitting at. It comes from the leadership a lot of times. Like a lot of these prosecutions that we see where there's this witch hunt you're talking about, that I was telling you about, where they're targeting people, that's from the Obama administration. When they started really lowering the standard. They rewrote the law under Obama. The UCMJ was rewritten multiple times. Congress rewrote it multiple times because these lobby groups were coming in, and they would look and say, hey, we're not getting enough convictions. Instead of saying, well, maybe we're prosecuting people without evidence, or maybe they didn't do it, they're like, rewrite the law. So what I'm saying is we're seeing like kind of the tail end of some of that. And it's the same thing you see on college campuses. Up until the current president made some changes over here regarding the due process afforded to college students involving misconduct and sexual misconduct. Mm-hmm. I mean, before, under Obama, if some girl says, I was drinking in a dorm, I think something happened, I don't know what happened, they would kick the guy out and stamp his transcript as a sex offender. No due process. It's you can call it due process. It's basically a couple left-wing professors looking at the allegation being like, we don't want this on our campus. And the guy would be gone. And try getting into a school. Make sure your parents pay for 3 years to go to Stanford, and you get some flimsy allegation that wouldn't stand up in any court. I'm not talking about things that go to court. These things would never go to court. These are just like, oh, I think a guy touched me, I was too drunk. Oh my God, you've been offended, hashtag me too. And that kid is now
ruined,
waiting tables somewhere. And in the sense that he threw away all that money and he can't get a job anywhere. There's nothing wrong with waiting tables. I worked at McDonald's for 2 years and worked in bars, but you know what I'm saying? It's like you take someone who could be, like we see the same thing at West Point, where you get someone, they get an allegation thrown at them, and without really any due process, they get the boot, and they have to pay that back, the hundreds of thousands of dollars they spend on them. So, yeah, I think it starts at the top. I mean, if there's a corrupt leadership, moral leadership, at any organization, at any level, at the leadership at the top, it kind of trickles down because the commanders cultivate who comes up under them. And so, they bring up, often in the military, you see, like, let's say someone's a general, they bring their people, their colonels to be their brigade commanders, and they kind of put this team together. And that's their leadership style trickles down.
Yeah, so it's from the top.
Could you tell us about you represented Sergeant? Yeah, right. You
Sergeant
represented.
Driver.
Yeah. Could, and Specialist, how you say his name? Hunsaker?
Hunsaker, yes.
What,
yeah. So
what
you're
was-
asking about those guys?
Yeah.
So Sergeant Driver is a friend of mine. I defended him. He was my last case. That's the one at Bagram. We're Facebook friends. He's an awesome guy. He just retired. He was able to we got him acquitted, and he was able to just recently retire from the Army Reserve. He lost a little bit of because of the allegations. They delayed his promotion, but he ended up retired as E6, and he runs a coffee company in Indianapolis. It's a company that employs veterans. And so when I see cases like that, and I talked to him actually the other day, and I represented him 15 years ago. He's doing great, and it makes my job worth it to see someone like that I helped, that's was being railroaded, and he's turned his turn lemons into really some lemonade, and gone on to do great things. But you know what he said when he was acquitted, that he has faith in the system and due process, probably more faith than I had at the time. And he felt that the Army charged him, but ultimately the jury would acquit him. And that's what happened, because the jury in the Army, once we pick the members that are not biased, I think we get fair outcomes, and we get good, fair results. So, but Hunsaker, that's a whole nother situation. I mean, that case has been, basically Hunsaker was killed. I don't know if you guys know about that, but back, during the hunt for Zarqawi, remember Zarqawi was the leader of Al-Qaeda in Iraq in 06, run around beheading people, very, very bad guy. That's an understatement. But we were hunting him down. Our task force that we had wasn't large enough, because this guy was good at what he did. He had a massive intelligence network, so we were having trouble tracking him down. So they went to Colonel Michael Steele is his name. He was the commander in the Black Hawk Down mission in Somalia. He was a captain at the time. He's a ranger. So they sent this guy, Colonel Steele, who's retired, after Zarqawi, and they were sent on a kill-em-all mission. That was the problem. The orders were to kill all military-age males on the objective, which was this island that was a Al-Qaeda training compound. It was confirmed to be that. And there were some politics involved. So they unleashed it was a pre-dawn raid. The Iraqis kind of tipped off the people on the island. The Americans are always trying to work with our partners. Half of them are like stabbing us in the back, honestly. So they tipped them off, and we knew that it was a compromised mission on the way in. And, these guys the guys who were there were either Syrian or Al-Qaeda Al-Qaeda is comprised of people from all over the world. It's just not people from, Iraq. They're from Chechnya. They could be from the United States. They're from everywhere, England. And so they captured some of these folks. And I'm going to jump to the end. Basically, Hunsaker was accused of killing 3 of them. And he ended up pleading guilty to killing 3 of them. He did. But that became a big political issue, because these guys were sent on a kill-em-all mission. And the Army turned their back once it became public. And they tried to make it because he did shoot them in violation of the laws, the rules of engagement at the time, which were, they tried to cover up some of the rules of engagement and whatnot, but technically he was guilty of what he was charged with under the law at the time.
Right.
And so he was charged with 3 life sentences. Murder in the military carries mandatory life. So even if you kill Osama bin Laden, and the Army says, no, he had his hands up, you violated the rules of engagement, you would be charged with murder, and you would face life in prison or possibly death for killing bin Laden, for example. And so Hunsaker, he ended up doing about 5 years total. The cool thing is with this guy, and he's 101st Airborne, and he told the judge that what he did to save lives, that he would do it again. And it was actually a pretty a chilling speech that he gave to the judge before he got his sentence. And, he saluted and said he'll do his time and he'll get out. And he did get out. He went on to get an education once he got out. And he's been, he's working well, has a family now. He lives out in Missouri. He's also another good guy. I keep in touch with his mom.
Yep.
When that order was given to go on this kill-all mission, we used to call it search and destroy, but nonetheless.
Yeah.
And this went down. Did any of his superior officers have to take a fall because somebody issued that order as a kill-all mission?
That's the interesting thing. So yes and no. So the 101st Airborne, instead of saying, because those orders don't come off the top of someone's head. And they don't just say, oh, kill them all mission. We're going to send 1,200 troops on an air assault. It was the largest air assault in the Iraq War. That was the largest air assault since the first Gulf War. I mean, it was a massive operation. The idea was to hit every target we could to either kill Zarqawi or flush him out and gather intelligence. So that way it was successful. It didn't kill him, but 1 month later, he was on the run, and that's when he was killed. Remember, they hit it with the JDAM bomb and so forth. So anyway, what ended up happening is when I had to go over to Iraq to defend this guy, and we got the orders, and they cleansed all the orders. The JAGs did. They took all the power, because the soldiers were given a PowerPoint little printout with the objectives and everything, and it said kill all. There was an acronym for it. Al Qaeda in Iraq was or maybe KI or whatever. But anyway, my client had that in his pocket in his camo uniform, BDUs at the time, and so, or the desert cami. But so he gave me that, and then when we got that, part of our deal was we had to stop talking to the media, like me, if he wanted this deal that they were going to give him, which would get him out of jail in 5 years. So it was contingent on him shutting his mouth. It wasn't, by the way, it's not a defense to say my boss told me to do this. You know, it's funny because when we're prosecuting Nazis, we went after the highest level folks. Oh, is this general? Is that general? And a lot of the lower people got away with it, right? To some extent. But in the military, when it's us that's prosecuting our own, the ones who gave the orders were kind of, wash their hands, and then they pin it on the lower enlisted. So Colonel Steele, and you can look this up online and read about it, he was given a letter of reprimand from General Shirelli, who was one of the commanders in Iraq, but they classified his letter of reprimand. So for the killings, they gave him basically, if it's classified, that means it will never be released, and no one's gonna ever know what's in there. Someone apparently leaked it, but he got a letter. I mean, his punishment for sending these guys on a kill them all mission, which in Vietnam that would be a legal order. Under the new rules, it's kind of questionable. I mean, it is under the rules of law as they teach you, but they were sent on the mission anyway. But yeah, he got a letter of reprimand, and multiple other people went to prison. And one of the guys ended up, from what I understand, I'm not going to say which one, but one of them ended up contracting HIV while in prison. Not my client, but one of the other individuals who went to jail for this. So, but Hunsaker's good. He's out.
You appeared in a 2009 CNN documentary, "Killing at the Canal." What was that?
Okay, so that case was kind of, for me, it was one of my one of the more cases that caused me more stress than a lot of other ones, because Petraeus, General Petraeus, he decides, he wanted to run for president. And I'll be open with you. I'm not a huge fan of his techniques. A lot of people hailed him as the hero. He was court-martialing people for adultery while committing adultery himself. Right. And you know what? If you're going to commit adultery, that's on you. But don't prosecute someone who works for you for the same thing. Right. That's where the leadership comes in, right? So he said during the surge, the surge where we surged up our troops in Iraq, that was written off by politicians as a great, successful event. But I've had so many clients and just soldiers that I know that were part of that who tell another story. So they took these soldiers, like that was Sergeant First Class Joseph Mayo, and they said, listen, we're going to be with the Iraqis. We're going to show them hearts and minds. Two things happen. We're going to surge up. We're going to show we're with them, although they're not with us. And they put this guy's unit into a neighborhood that It's called the El Jihad neighborhood. So the neighborhood of Baghdad was called El Jihad, the Holy War neighborhood.
Yeah.
So his unit was partnered with an Iraqi police unit that they couldn't trust, and because they were working, there was a Shia unit. And anyway, then Petraeus had the bright idea of saying, hey, we're going to build the trust with the Iraqis because the reason they don't like us is because they don't trust us. So we're going to tighten the rules of engagement, and we're not going to. So if you get engaged, you can't really shoot back unless you can clearly see the weapon and all that. We can't use anti-tank or like if someone's running at you from a position, you can't hit them with a rocket. You had to basically see the guy, and like we're playing at a different set of rules here. Mm-hmm. So the other thing, so what he did is he said, and this came out in the documentary, they could not keep someone in custody under these new rules unless we had two Muslims that were willing to be a witness. But at the time, they were killing any witnesses. So if you saw an Al-Qaeda person, or even like a Shia Sunni group murdering each other, you're not going to come forward and go to court, okay? There was no protection. You know, they killed Saddam's lawyers, right? Like they actually killed them and threw them out in the street in front of the courthouse in the middle of Saddam's trial. So it's not like it's not like America, right?
Right.
Where you can just show up to court and you can testify. Like it's pretty crazy over there. So anyway, they took Joseph Mayo's unit. They put him in this facility that was surrounded by 6, 7, 8-story building high rises. And so they get two guys are sniped by these Iraqis. 2 Americans get killed. And they're calling in, they're like, we need an airstrike, denied. We need this, denied. So what they did was they set up what they called them sniper screens. And it's nothing fancy. It's basically a sheet from your bed. They tied 550 cord, the parachute cord, and they strung up sheets like across the sky so the snipers couldn't get a clear shot. They'd be basically shooting through the screen. And that sort of stuff was happening. And in a matter of like 2 months, they lost, I think it was 3 or 4 Americans in this surge thing. So what ended up happening, which brings me to my story, it's a true story, but Mayo's unit kept rounding these guys up. Like they would roll up on someone that was beheading someone, they would capture them, and they would take them to the DHA, it's a detainee holding area run by the Air Force, a little different set of standards. They had a more touchy-feely approach in the Air Force jail. There was a terrorist jail. And so they would roll these guys up in there and say, hey, here's what this guy did. He was caught doing this, that, and the other. And they would generally be released with the next day. It was called the catch and release program. That's what they called it in the documentary. And so that happened. Another one of their soldiers get killed. And this unit's getting pretty frustrated because they're basically driving around just getting shot at. And they can't really fire back. So on one of their missions, they're driving around. They have a Bradley and a Humvee. And they hear like Russian heavy machine gun fire, like da 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 da. And they see this family. It's like a dad with a mom with these children hunkered down behind like a little concrete barrier, and they're pinned down. And somebody's shooting at them. This is during the heavy sectarian violence, where 200 or 300 people would die in Iraq and Baghdad in 2008, almost every night. And so this is just another event. And so they roll up on them with the Bradley. They cannot fire back with their cannon. They're denied because the cannon on a Bradley could probably taken these guys out, but they're denied. So they chase them down into a house. They find the guy say, "Oh no, I'm just merchants," typical crap. And they find night vision goggles, a bunch of not only Russian but American sniper rifles with night vision scopes. They find like a massive cache of weapons and stuff, and they take photos and videos. I actually have all that stuff still on my computer of this stuff. And so they arrest the 3 guys with the pictures. The family decides they don't want to be involved in this. Who knows? They probably got killed after that. So they take these guys to the detainee holding area. There was 3 of them, and they turn them in. And this time they don't even take them. They said, hey, under the new rules, I need 2 Muslim witnesses ready to testify. And there was another option would be you have to catch them in the act and have one witness who is, because they wouldn't take American testimony. This is where the crime occurs. And this is not in dispute. So basically the first sergeant says, I'm not putting these guys back on the street. We're going to take care of them. So they took them to the Canal, and the problem is they brought too many witnesses. One witness is too many. And so anyway, they shoot these guys and they end up leaving them there. Everything's good to go. The killings stop and they lose no more men. They go home to Germany. This unit was based up in Vilseck, Germany, at an army base, army post. And like a year later, one of the soldiers that was there that night gets into trouble because he went over to Amsterdam and smoked drugs, and they caught him in urinalysis. So his army lawyer, his defense lawyer, tells this guy, hey man, it looks like you're going to go down for the drugs. And he goes, is there any dirt you got on the command? This guy's a piece of garbage, this lawyer. Mm. And the kid goes, yeah, man, we shot some prisoners over in Iraq. And he's like, really? So the lawyer writes all this down. And then he turns over his client's statement, which is, I think, an ethical violation. And this guy got investigated. He should have been court-martialed. He turns it over to CID and says, hey, my client said this happened. And his client gets charged. So imagine someone comes to me and confides in me, and then I turn them over to the FBI and they get charged with the crime. Like, you can't do that as a defense lawyer. It's confidential communications. So anyway, Joseph Mayo goes in there and he basically tells him what happened. The police are like, I know these guys. He basically get him to admit to what happened, and then he ended up getting like several decades in prison. The problem is he had traumatic brain injury. He had from his third deployment, grenades and all that sort of thing, and just getting hit by IEDs. That causes brain injury right there. And he also had PTSD and other things. And it was a tragic case because he was facing 3 life sentences. So the first sergeant fought his case, and the jury convicted him, gave him life, a mandatory life. The second guy went and he got convicted. He got life. And so my guy, this is why I told you this case was tough for me, because I really like this guy. He's a good guy. What he did legally under the rules of law was wrong. Did he save people's lives? Most likely. Morally, did he do the right thing? I would have shot those guys in a heartbeat. I just wouldn't have brought any witnesses. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of hard to say what you would do unless you're in that situation, right? But under the facts, it was a tragic situation. And to see this guy go to jail, and his family and kids, he ended up getting some clemency and getting out earlier, but it was, terrible.
Wow. Ed, in closing.
Yeah. Well, first off, I'm glad we got a little lesson with the difference between the civilian and the military courts. The military seems to be swifter in some ways, and in other ways, if you try to fight it and you got to go up above, it may take a lot longer. But and it seems the deck is stacked against you quite a bit in the military justice. Not to say that it doesn't have some things stacked against you in the civilian courts, but definitely it's going to take, if you're going to have a military that's going to work and it's going to have justice, they better make sure they're getting moral people that are put in charge of things, not just somebody because it gets appointed because they have a friend of a friend. It better be somebody that's, that has a good moral ground. But, George, what do you think?
Michael, you are the head of, I don't know if you're the president but you're the chief huckamucka. I'll say it that way. Of a very special group of lawyers noted as the best lawyers in the world. And I was reading what they have to have 50 trials under their belt. They have to win 35 of those 50. They have to be big felony cases and so on and so forth. How many people are in that group?
Oh, it's American Board of Criminal Lawyers. Yeah, it's 200 lawyers in the United States. So
Wow.
I'm very lucky. I'm not saying I'm the best lawyer in the world. I can't say that, and I wouldn't. There are a lot of great lawyers out there, but that group is a pretty elite group. I was very lucky. I'm the youngest. Well, last I checked, I'm the youngest guy in there because in order to do 50 felony trials, you generally have to, in the modern time, you got to be around for a while. I've done hundreds.
Well, I have noticed that your team, at least that the reviews I've seen, I saw one site gave you 80 reviews and not one was anything other than a 5. 5 out of 5. That doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, and I tell you what, man, there are a lot of people out there represented that after they're acquitted, I'm like, hey man, give me a review, and they're like, yeah, nice knowing you, type of thing. Like they don't want to put it out there.
Right.
But yeah, so yeah, I mean, every year I do about 20 to 22 felony trials. Like I did one last week that involved an accident that happened in West Point where somebody died, and then this week I'm in a case, like I said, in Texas. So in the next week I'm going to Fort Hood, and then I'm going to defend a Green Beret. And so the thing is, I usually don't do them back to back, but with COVID, they took all my cases and shifted them, like bunched them together. But I'll be ready, you know.
And you do these all over the world, Italy.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And I'm excited. You know, I'm doing a case coming up, and my wife's my law partner. You said I'm the president. She really runs the operation, and I just work for her, you know. But she's the boss. So yeah, I'm going to Italy. I'm doing a case in Italy, and then down in Germany or up in Germany, like back to back. So hopefully I can get over there with the travel restrictions, and
yeah, really.
They're going to have to give me some sort of an exception. I heard that's what they're doing now. If you're coming there for military business, they'll get you a diplomatic exception. Because right now you can't go to Germany.
Speaking of the boss, I better say this because if I don't, when I see her again, she'll give me a good thumping. But I want to wish my wife a very, very happy 52nd wedding anniversary today. And Mrs. Espinlaub, I love you more today than I did way back then.
George, that's not what you told me pre-show.
Ed, you're going to get me thumped. she beats me 3 times a day. You know what I mean?
Yep, I know what you mean.
In fact, I take her the whip 3 times a day. I said, go ahead, lay it on me now. But anyhow, honey, happy anniversary. 52 years, and I always tell her, if I was married to me, I wouldn't still be married to me. But I also tell her, Michael, if you ever leave me, I'm going with you. So, happy anniversary, Mrs. Espinlaub. Michael, it has been a delight. My, oh my, we could talk for hours about this. It's just so fascinating.
The time flew by there,
It did.
Fun.
It's incredible what you're doing because
it's heroic. It's really heroic.
Yeah, especially in this day and age in which we live. A lot of people, far too many people, don't even give our military a second thought. Mm-hmm. And they don't think about the sacrifices, the pain, the heartache, just from the separations at times on deployments and so on and so forth, the sacrifices that the men and women make, their families make. It's incredible. And it's so good to know that there's someone standing in the hedge and making up the gap. Or standing in the gap and making up the hedge. It's just so incredible. I tip my hat to you, sir. I thank you for it. And listen, we would love to have you come back whenever you're available. I know you're a very busy man. It's hard.
Yeah, we can set something up.
Yeah, and it's hard to tell what time zone you'll be in, but just let us know. We'll make this thing happen again. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. I really appreciate it. I had a good time, guys.
Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you so very, very much. And if you can give us a little help with what was his name, Aaron Howard?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll text him right now.
All right. We sure would appreciate it. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, wow. go to this website right here. There's a lot of good information on there. There's some videos on there about uh, prior clients that Michael represented and how they turned out and how he got about doing all this stuff. I found it quite intriguing. So go there. He's got a YouTube page, channel. What's your YouTube channel, Michael?
I don't know the URL, but you can get there right through if you go to my website, you'll click on there's a YouTube link right on there. And also, we didn't bring up, it's published my first fictional book, which is a military legal thriller called Battle Mind on Amazon.
Battle Mind on
Yeah.
Battle Mind on Amazon. Right there. Battle Mind on Amazon. So
it's a fun read. You'll like it.
And you wrote how many other books? 137? Or I mean, it seemed like it was that many.
It was like 8.
Wow.
That's my first fictional book. And all the other books are legal books, like books for lawyers, right?
So go to Amazon, ladies and gentlemen, and just look up Battle Mind. It's I'm sure it's going to be good. Michael, thank you very, very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Good night, guys.
Good
So
night.
ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends, Romans, and countrymen, whether you're down the street, around the corner, across America, or somewhere around this great big world, thank you for tuning in. Start those watch parties. Get this out into your news feed so we can get it pushed out everywhere, near, far, and wide. And we thank you for tuning in. Remember, be kind one to another, take care of one another, and don't ever be afraid to tell somebody, I love you. It could possibly save a life. Remember that. So till next time, I trust that God will keep you right in the center of his hand. Good night, everybody.